I'd like to call this meeting to order, the quarterly meeting of the Capital Area Road and Bridge District. We'll do a brief roll call. Mr. Hank Grace, representing President Urso of Iberville Parish, present. President Berthelot, West Baton Rouge Parish.
Present.
Mr. Fred Rayford, representing Sharon Reston Broom, the President of East Baton Rouge Parish.
Present.
Mr. Daniel Helms, representing President Quintmaw of Ascension Parish.
Present.
Secretary Calavoda of DOTD.
Present.
And I'm Jay Campbell, the chairman of the Capital Area Road and Bridge District. You should have received in your email a notice of this meeting that there were minutes attached for the September 25th meeting that we held. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion to approve. Second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion, any required changes or amendments? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. The minutes are approved. Kara, I will invite you. Do we have a representative from DOTD? Okay.
Family situation. So Maria Reed, who works with me at Atlas OB.
Okay, great. When you do introduce yourselves, be sure you do it into the microphone and who you represent. Kara, we know you, but maybe the parties don't.
No worries.
Okay.
I'm Kara Maury, the project manager for this project for Louisiana DOT. I work for Atlas Technical Consultants.
I'm Maria Bernard Reed. I also work for Atlas. I'm the deputy project manager.
Okay. All right,
Excellent.
we'll get started. Okay, so welcome. I think it's probably our 14th or 15th time presenting on this project. You haven't gotten tired of me yet, so I think you'll, keep on enjoying our presentation. We're kind of mindful that we have a few new members coming on board, so we did put a little bit of project history in there for their benefit or for anybody new joining us today. Again, this is our project team. We are in part 2 of the contract, the environmental evaluation phase. Again, Atlas is the prime consultant for DOTD, and then this is our list of our sub-consultants. We have a pretty large team, but everybody has a key, technical piece to perform on this project. The project overview ultimate objective is obviously to construct a new crossing of the Mississippi River in the greater Baton Rouge area. Again, 2 parts of the contract. Part 1 was the enhanced planning study or investigation, our EPI is what we call it. That was a 2-year time frame. We got our notice to proceed in early July of 2020, and that spanned through summer of 2022. And then part 2, the environmental evaluation phase, which is where we are now, began kind of winterish of 2022 and anticipated to be completed winter of 2024. This was our original study area. Again, it was, showing all of these slides. We've kind of been consistent throughout this presentation, since the beginning, basically, since started, of showing the same, how we started out. This was our original study area. It was very large. It started on the northern limit at the new Horace Wilkinson Bridge in Baton Rouge on I-10 and extended roughly 62 river miles down south to the Sunshine Bridge near Donaldsonville. And then our eastern and western limits, or LA 30 on the east bank to LA 1 on the west bank. So ultimate objective was that what we started with was identify approximately 30 alternatives. That was kind of the goal of our enhanced planning investigation that we did. And I'll go through how we got to where we are today. But I always like to start out and remind people of what the benefits of a new river crossing will bring. First of all, number 1, meets our purpose and need of our project. That's increased capacity and improved connectivity. It's not all just about traffic. It's all an alternate route for incident management, and it just improves our overall transportation system operations. The new crossing is expected to serve primarily local traffic between the east bank and the west bank of the Mississippi River. That's kind of a point we can't stress largely enough, is that our large problem of the greater Baton Rouge area is that it's local traffic. So the greatest singular travel time benefit is projected to be on LA1 northbound in the afternoon peak hour. It is expected, if anyone sat in that traffic on LA1 in the afternoon, I'm sure most people in this room have, it's expected to reduce that maximum queue length near I-10 eastbound merge ramp by 50%. This is a graphic from some traffic data that we it came out of the models that we built for part one of the project. And this is basically showing that in one direction on I-10 daily, there's about 63,000 cars crossing over that I-10 Mississippi River Bridge. And roughly a third of that whole traffic, about almost 26,000 of that, comes just from LA1 alone. So again, regardless of location of this bridge, it's expected to benefit LA1 the most. It's also expected to save over 1 million hours of travel time annually. And we talk about benefits in travel time savings because this project is going to have a benefit on the entire network. And for any one singular project to have a positive benefit on a network of our size is a pretty big feat. So we do talk about benefits in travel time savings. Again, this is kind of that history that I wanted to just share with some of our newer members coming in. This is our screening methodology that we used in part one of the project. Again, I mentioned we were tasked with coming up with approximately 30 alternatives. We ended up coming up with 32 in our pre-screening time of the project. That lasted, roughly a little less than a year. Was that as building traffic models, navigation studies, all of the above were included in that. We have PowerPoints of the whole history of the project actually on our website, which is mrbsouth.com, if anybody does want to go back and look at things. Then we again came up with 32 alternatives. We then entered into our round one screening where we decided we were going to avoid highly sensitive resources, incorporating that travel demand, traffic information, some bridge design considerations, some stakeholder engagement. We had heavy stakeholder and agency coordination throughout this period. So the first kind of round of screening, we eliminated we got from 32 down to 20. After that, we started to talk to the river pilots and kind of the navigation stakeholders very heavily. And out of those 20 alternatives from there, we eliminated 10 and came out to the 10 alternatives that we ended up going into the public with. And we had heavy public meetings. There were 6 public meetings on both banks of the river in every area of the project affected where there were alternatives. So out of that, we had a second round of screening, which considered the stakeholders, the public comments, state and federal agencies, local governments, and we were able to eliminate those 10 down to 3, or we screened them down to 3, which are the 3 alternatives that are we call them our preliminary alternatives that are moving into the NEPA phase, the environmental phase. Again, this was our project workflow for part one of the project, which is substantially complete. Our enhanced planning investigation document was submitted to Federal Highway earlier this year, and hopefully we got notification. We will probably have the first, it's called a PEL document, Planning and Environment Linkage, in Louisiana. So that's a good thing, and what that means is that's going to allow us to largely take all of the studies that were done in part one and move it into, and really be acknowledged to move it into NEPA. So our traffic study will all be kind of migrated into the NEPA phase, and we'll be able to use that. This is our project workflow proposed for part 2. We got our notice to proceed for part 2 environmental evaluation in early 2023. However, we didn't actually get our contract till kind of mid-year. But this is, kind of just a snapshot of all the studies that are going to be going on in part 2 of the contract. And again, that anticipated end date of winter 2024. So this is just a snapshot of the 3 alternatives and how they look today. The way that we had them shown, they have been adjusted slightly just at the intersections just to accommodate for things such as utilities and things as we move further along and have some field data. So they are all 3 in Iberville Parish, kind of on LA1 side, all kind of near a little bit north of Shintech and directly south of the Shintech Gate. And then on the east bank in the city of St. Gabriel, kind of right south of the East Baton Rouge-Iberville Parish line. So scope for part 2, which is environmental, this is just an update on, there's a lot of field work going on that has been going on for the past several months. So basically our update today is update on field work, because that's where we are in the project. DOTD did fly some LiDAR data, so that's definitely substantially complete. We're using that to kind of do some topographic survey right now, which the field work for the topographic survey should be done by the end of this year, so in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll get their survey. They're basically kind of field checking that LiDAR data that was flown and picking up some drainage locations and things of that nature that are kind of harder to get with LiDAR. We'll be doing some subsurface utility engineering, which is getting kicked off now as well. We have completed our bathymetric survey of the river, and I'll show kind of a cool screenshot of what that looks like. Geotechnical investigations are ongoing. That should be, they are kind of almost largely done with drilling on the east bank, but should be complete in the next several weeks. We're waiting on our, trying to get permits as well to do our geotech borings in the Batcher area near the river. Line and grade, that's been ongoing basically since part 1 of the study. So we're tightening some things up there now that we have the intersections a little bit more finalized. That will be ongoing probably till the spring. We did complete some data collection on the traffic side of things, because in the environmental phase, we did lots of traffic, different types of traffic, building some pretty complex models in part 1. And then part 2 is we're actually doing the data collection to identify like the mitigation and things that would be needed near the intersections where the alternatives, kind of zooming into the areas that would be affected and coming up with some solutions there to accommodate the new bridge traffic. We're doing an intermediate toll study. That, again, they are working on the model now, the toll plan and operations side of things. So we expect that to be ongoing for the next few months as well. Conceptual bridge design, again, that's been kind of happening since the beginning of the project, and should be wrapping up with the line and grade. We do need some geotechnical borings to kind of help them with the foundation design on the bridge. So again, a couple of more months on that. And then the H&H, basically the drainage study, hydrologic analysis, that should be wrapping up. They're waiting for a few things as well with the topo survey to narrow down some of those drainage crossings there. Public and agency outreach, I've mentioned that a few times now, but that has been a huge part of this project and will continue to be. So again, this is a snapshot from our drainage model. It is still being he told me 5 times, it's still being calibrated, so he was hesitant to show. I said, it's fine. I will say it's draft and in progress. But basically, this is what is showing you the 100-year flood velocity and direction of flow in the Mississippi River and kind of the banks, outer banks of it. It's a screenshot from our 2D model in HEC-RAS, which is the software. The colors indicate velocity, and the white dots indicate flow direction there. So basically, the dark blue is the slowest kind of moving, and yellow and in red in some cases, just not shown on this screen, are the fastest velocities there. So I thought it was just a cool screenshot to say what's being done now. There's actually something you can look at. Another cool thing that's been done is our bathymetric survey in the river. Again, this is showing elevations. And these are our three alternatives kind of just laid out on top of it. But this is kind of like if you were in the middle of the river, kind of looking at that east bank. So this is the top of the levee right here, just showing the elevation scans of the river. The colors indicate elevation changes. And this is just another view of it. If you were kind of a top-down view, you can see from bank to bank on each side. Again, elevation changes differently, shown on this side. And this is alternative, actually the E11-4 alternative. We just chose one to show. So kind of wrapping up, we decided to split the environmental evaluation phase into 2 parts. So the tasks that I've showed you already were the pre-NEPA task. We have to be very careful about when we start our NEPA clock because new federal regulations, we have very specific timelines to complete NEPA once it's started. So we're hoping to kick NEPA officially off very soon. That will involve the real, again, we have had public and agency outreach throughout the project, but like the public meetings and the real kind of official meetings will start happening in NEPA. Again, we have stakeholder meetings all throughout. We will continue to do so, but we will have public meetings and possibly a public hearing. We'll start actually preparing our document, which is the end goal of the environmental evaluation, is an environmental assessment. And we'll start to do those NEPA kind of more natural resource ecology type field studies with a 600-foot buffer that is shown on most of our alternatives. We pretty much investigate that whole buffer area, when in actuality, the right-of-way would probably be about half of that amount. But that gives us a little bit of room to wiggle around if we need to, if we do find things when we do the field surveys. So that'll be our wetland delineations, threatened and endangered species surveys, cultural resource investigations, the shovel testing, an air study, noise, conceptual stage relocation plan, and like the phase 1 environmental site assessment type studies. Again, we'll be refining that traffic and then wrapping up our intermediate toll study as well. And this is our overall schedule. I know it's a bit tiny, but it basically shows everything that I just said, wrapped up into a visual. Again, this is our website, mrbsouth.com. If anybody, all of our technical studies thus far, our enhanced planning document, we're just waiting on the final kind of sign off from Federal Highway, but that will be posted on our website hopefully pretty soon as well. And that really gives the whole history of the project, the kind of method to our madness of how we went through and screened out alternatives and how we got to today. Any questions?
Just to kick off the questions, when you go to slide 13 and 14 and have the colored stratifications, is there a better desired color that you would want to have in the stratification?
Oh, no, this is literally just showing you the elevation of the river.
So the red is more shallow or going up towards the levees, and the dark purple is the navigation channel.
The deep draft.
Okay.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that channel,
Is this a
Moves.
side view or an overhead view?
this one is directly overhead.
It's an
bird's
overhead
eye.
view. So, and what you're saying is if they were navigating here, they would go to the blue area or the purple
Right.
area.
Right.
And this channel moves around, like the actual deep, it moves all over the river. So it was actually a pretty cool story when we met with the river pilots. They knew where the channel was, no matter what river mile we were on. And they, we showed pier layouts, potential pier layouts, and so they helped us to really narrow down our alternatives based on this river.
If you went to the slide before this,
Sure.
now what's the difference in those?
So this is actually our 3 alternatives, a snapshot of the river bottom where each of our 3 alternatives cross the river. So E11-4, this is kind of, we'd be obviously spanning over the river here, but this is just showing the river bottom exactly where this alternative crosses, and this is the top of the levee right here. So this is just showing one bank. We're like in the middle of the river right here. And this top red piece is the bank, the top bank. So it's just showing kind of the same little cross-section for each of the 3 alternatives, what the river bottom looks like.
This is for information only. It doesn't give you a guidance on which are better.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's information. It's going to help us with our bridge design and our drainage model as well.
It identifies where the river is scouring.
Right.
So when they design the footings for the bridge, this is very important information to help to build those footings.
Okay.
Yeah, we typically
design.
wouldn't have geotechnical information or things of like bathymetric surveys at this stage in the process, but because of the nature of the project, we wanted, this is not useless data that they can't use should the project proceed into further stages of delivery.
Okay.
So Kara, on slide 14, we have, some depths. And so from the top of the levee to the bottom of where y'all look is like 84 feet, is that what?
Yeah, the dark purple it's the kind of light purple almost is
Yeah.
at negative 84, so it goes even a little bit further than that on dark purple.
Is that to the bottom of the river or?
Yep,
Yeah.
I would say so. The very deepest part there. right next to where the levee starts to toe of the levee, I guess. Huh? No, not a whole lot of purple. Some blue.
Yeah,
Secretary Calavoto?
yes. I can't read the Gantt chart in the back, so when is the intermediate toll study supposed to be finished?
Oh, hold on, I have it. I think I put springish, or before, maybe in the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay, so like by March or something?
Yeah, I think early spring is what we anticipated.
Okay,
They kind of started right away. They had an independent economist start doing some of the items that they could in the
Okay.
beginning. So they are actually to the model now.
okay, very good, thank you.
Anyone else?
Tyra, I guess my question is dealing with page 15, dealing with the stakeholder and public meetings back after the environmental Part 2 study's done. Do we have any idea about when that may take place? Because I think that's where things are going to get kind of rough, like the water. I guess I'm just curious as to when that may be, what time y'all would see that to take place.
I think our goal for those are kind of late spring, like Mayish.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Helms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two questions that are a little bit disparate. Dr. Calavoto brought up the intermediate toll study. Seeing what happened at Calcasieu Parish here a couple months back, has there been any mitigated strategies or any thoughts on how to maybe not have this die before it really gets a chance to live?
It keeps me up at night a little bit. I'm worried about it, but there are a few things that differentiate our project from the Calcasieu one. Number one, our bridge is it's not an interstate facility. It's not an existing facility either. It would be a new bridge, which I think is a little bit, easier to swallow than something that you've been using for your whole life and now have to pay for. Dr. Calavoto, please feel free to correct me if I'm off track, but I think that's a bit of a difference there, is that it's going to be a new facility and it's not on an interstate system. I don't think there's any denying that. I mean, obviously there's big need for Calcasieu as well, but this is a little bit different climate here. And that saying that statement about the interstate, the trucking industry is usually a huge advocate, not necessarily positive on tolls, and I don't know that we would have that full aspect of that on this bridge.
I mean, you will have the industrial trips, likely not going to go from one plant to another, but, you will have trips that will be crossing the river in that area.
Absolutely.
So I would recommend that there be some sort of mitigation discussion so that we don't run into the problem here.
I mean, there is a ferry right now, that is kind of tolled one way. And also something I did not remember that I was reminded of recently was that the Sunshine Bridge was tolled one direction, and when that was, each reached the end of where it needed to be, it went away. So I think the education on the tolling, and again, tolling is just one, it's not the biggest generator, it's not reliant. Our project, we actually have, federal money dedicated to it as well, so it's not the biggest factor in the financial part of our project. I guess that's fair to say. It's, one piece of the money generator on this project.
My second question, during our last meeting, we had quite a few residents here upset about the alternative across Plaquemines Point. In dealing with environmental, there's some things that can be mitigated, wetlands you can buy into a bank, you can plant trees, whatever. It sounds like this alternative E11-4, at least, from what I've heard and what I've seen, we may be taking a resource that we can't get back. Has there been any further discussion since that meeting back in September about what could be done to mitigate impacts on Plaquemines Point? Or is there, if it becomes that this is an unfeasible alternative as we continue on, is there an opportunity to bring a third, fourth alternative really in place of the third, or can you move forward with two?
We absolutely could move forward with two, but there's always a possibility of a NEPA-derived alternative. So there's that, which we will get into. On the discussion of impacts, though, to resources, we consider all resources, whether it be social impacts, natural resource type impacts, or people impacts. You know, we have to consider it all equally for all three alternatives. So each one of these alternatives has kind of pros and cons to the impacts. They all have different types of impacts. There's a lot of farmland as well. There's a lot of wetlands for each one. But just please note that there are a lot of elevated sections of roadway that would be crossing over those specifically wetland, forested type impacts. So that is a minimization tactic, but you know, there is room to wiggle around a little bit if need be on alignment itself. But again, once we get into the fieldwork aspect of this, we will start quantifying impacts, whether it be relocations of homes, whether it be impacts to wetlands, whether it be impacts to a minority population. So they all get treated equally. All three of them will have, you know, equal amounts of impacts assessed. And once we have that, that's what will guide our decision-making process. We have reached out to some of the landowners. We do anticipate some meetings with them. We will discuss and possibly do a site visit out there to see it firsthand. But again, and we would do that with any other stakeholder that, you know, had some issues raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dr.
All right.
Dr.
I
Calavoda?
think Hank wanted to go next.
Oh,
You want to speak?
Hank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kara, first of all, thanks for your hard work to get us to this point. Things seem to be moving along a little bit better now. Seems like we hit a little bit of a lull back several months ago, but you're moving forward. So thank you for those efforts to get us to where we are today. A couple of things. You talked about NEPA possibly kicking in very soon. What do you mean by very soon? Are we weeks, months away
in the
from this
next-
happening?
Next couple of months, for
Next
sure.
couple of months.
Yeah, we have
I'd
to
say
be.
a month to 6 weeks
Okay.
is what we're
So
shooting for.
that's relatively soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. My final question is, when you talk about the timelines and three alternatives, so is everything being done when you finish one alternative, you do the same thing to the second alternative, to the third alternative? Is that how it's working?
It's
or
concurrent.
are you concentrating on one at a time?
No, they
No.
all three. We do when we say we release somebody on field work, we're doing field work on all
Okay.
three,
Okay.
and that way we can evaluate them all at the same time equally. That's kind of the nature of the NEPA process. So
Okay.
they all get done concurrently.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's what takes a while to get it kicked off.
Understand.
Is we have to get all these people lined up and ready to go and make sure that we just, even with the geotechnical, there's a lot of landowners too. We want to notify everybody at the same time that people are going to be out there on the property. That's just a simple example, but there's a lot that we do, but it's all at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Dr. Calavoda?
Yes, thank you. I just want to make a point, since Kara brought up the ferry. Just please note, the day the bridge opens, the Plaquemine Ferry closes permanently. We're not going to run a ferry underneath a bridge, so I just want to clear that up right now in front of everybody for the record, okay? All right, thank you.
Any other questions for? Sure.
Kara, on the intermediate toll study, I mean, years ago, we did one in West Baton Rouge Parish with an investment rate. What is the intermediate traffic toll study, and what significant does it bring at this point?
I think it's a happy medium without doing a full investment grade, and the reason that was chosen was, largely due to the fact that if there is a P3 contractor coming later on down the line, that they would have to do that as well. So we decided on the intermediate to give us what we needed at this stage of the project without spending, the full-blown amount of money as something that wasn't exactly needed all the way yet, that the tolling aspect of it will get done eventually. So we're doing just enough to inform our decisions at this point. Now, what are I'm going to ask Dr. Calavoda, what are the exact differences?
the intermediate toll study is what you want to do at this point, because that helps you understand how to arrange your financing, basically, how much public money you're going to need. A P3, if you're going to do this as a P3, that private consortium of companies, they're not going to trust any investment grade study that anybody else does. It's their money at risk. They're going to have their own people do an investment grade study and take that to Wall Street and get their bonds rated. If for some chance we would want to go down the public, setting up a public tolling authority to run it as we have in the past, Sunshine Bridge being an example, then right before we went to try to get bonds rated and issued, we would hire a firm to do an investment grade study. Wall Street will only listen to 2 or 3 firms in the country. They won't listen to just an average consultant. There's a few of them that have the reputation, and they know their reputation's on the line, that they will listen to and rate bonds based upon the studies that they produce. And so doing an intermediate study, I think, is the right thing to do. It gives us an order of magnitude cost about how much we can get out of tolls versus public money that we would have to put toward the project, and that's what we need at this level to try to arrange financing for the new bridge.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Anyone else for the ladies from Atlas? Anybody else?
I would
Okay.
like to say just thank you for, we have a few faces who won't be back after today, Dr. Calavoda and President Berthelot and Mr. Grace. Thank you for your continued support of the project and, any help helping us just, get the project moved along in your areas even. So again, thanks, and then welcome to the new members.
Yes, thank you for your service.
Okay.
You'll still come. There you
Yeah,
go.
y'all come be our cheering section.
Well, thank y'all.
Thank
Thanks.
you. We'll move to the next agenda item, which is under new business. As you'll recall, at the last meeting, I was authorized to pursue getting the RFP prepared with legal counsel and getting it posted so that we could start getting proposals for consideration by the commissioners, obviously next year. And that was the intent. I just need for y'all to approve the latest legal bill, which was roughly $2,500. So moved. Thank you. Do we have a second? I'll second. All right. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Before we get to public comment, I would like to take a few liberties at this time to publicly thank President Berthelot. I don't think he has missed a meeting in the last 4 years of this district. He's been fervent in his attendance and participation, and has represented his parish for decades in West Baton Rouge Parish. And I think the people of that parish owe him a great deal and a debt of gratitude for that. So thank you, President Berthelot. Similarly, President Urso. He's not here, but he's represented by Hank Grace, and Hank has been here for many of the meetings when President Urso could not be here. And likewise, President Urso has represented his parish with great distinction for over 25 years. That's truly an amazing feat in today's public climate, in the public service arena. Thirdly, Secretary Calavoda has been with DOTD for many, many, many years and has been the sounding board for every secretary who's been in that office for a lot of those years, because he brings wisdom and counsel and knowledge and experience to that role. And we're very happy to have him now as the sitting secretary of the DOTD. But with a gubernatorial change, we will probably see a new secretary of DOTD when the new administration takes office. So I want to thank you as well for your service. I'd like to recognize 2 new commissioners who will be sitting here when we next meet in the first quarter of 2024. The new West Baton Rouge Parish elect is here, Mr. Jason Manola. Thank you for being here, showing interest, and you've got some big shoes to fill here with President Berthelot. And similarly, we have the new president-elect of Iberville Parish, the Honorable Chris Daigle, and he is replacing President Urso, effective, I would assume, January 2nd. I don't know what the inaugurational period is for either, but we appreciate that. I'm told we have some representatives here from Livingston Parish. Do we? Yes. Are you both Mr. Gilbert? Yes, sir. And Mr. Browning? Thank you for being here. They are representing President-elect Randy DeLotte, who is also a member. For those of you who don't know or remember when this was founded, I want to say in 2018, through legislation, the commissioners are chosen by statute as the 5 parish presidents of Livingston, Ascension, East Baton Rouge, West Baton Rouge, and Iberville parishes, and the secretary of DOTD, and then there's a governor's appointee. And I'm this governor's appointee here. And obviously, my continuation is dependent upon the new governor coming in as well. But that's how this is composed, and each of the commissioners have the ability to name a designee who can fill their role for any meeting with voice and vote. So as you see Mr. Grace here, he is representing President Urso. Mr. Rayford is representing Mayor Broome in Baton Rouge. And Mr. Helms is representing President Quintemont in Ascension Parish. So I want to thank everybody for your service on this commission thus far. And as we go forward into the new year, we will see where things lead. With that said, we're going to go to public comment, and I notice that I have several cards here, and I've gone through them and put them in alphabetically, but what I'd like to do first, is there anyone who wants to speak today about any of the crossings other than E11-4? And the way that's written, it's the letter E, Arabic numeral 11, and Roman numeral 4. Is someone else here that would like to speak to something other than that? Okay, then obviously all the people that want to speak want to talk about E11-4, and we will proceed. In alphabetical order, Mr. Gregory, and I'm reading this, I think it says Beckstrom, B-E-C-K, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I chose not to speak.
Okay, great.
It was skipping, I apologize.
Okay, no problem. Then we will go to Dr. Bordelon, Errol Douglas Bordelon. Yes, sir.
Lifelong resident of the community in Plaquemine Point, Sunshine. The past 10 years I've moved to Baton Rouge, but I still have a home there. My mother lives there.
Normally, we would ask you to come to the table, if you would, so we can get it on microphone. These meetings are streamed, and so the general public has the ability to watch our meetings, and they'd like to hear what anyone has to say. And for the record, you are
Errol Douglas Bordelon.
Errol Douglas Bordelon. Thank you.
Sure. I grew up in Sunshine in Plaquemine Point, and it's home. Past 10 years I've lived in Baton Rouge. My mother still lives in Plaquemine Point. My oldest brother still lives in Plaquemine Point. I still own property in Plaquemine Point. And my primary concern is just that the construction of this bridge in Plaquemine Point would disrupt the community. The bridge, as it's proposed, would cut across the north end of our property. And so that's why I'm here. That's why a number of us are here, is that we're worried about the impact it will have on our community, and that it would be a negative impact.
And this is the one we mentioned, E11-4, would cross your property?
Correct.
Gotcha.
The
And
north end of
that's
the property.
known as Plaquemine Point?
Correct.
Okay. Anything further?
No, sir. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Mr., is it Cardenter or is that Carpenter?
Thank you. My name is Charles Carpenter, and I have been a resident of Plaquemine Point for 47 years and have a good feel for what it actually is transpires year after year, and the differences from year after year, the impact of the Mississippi River on Plaquemine Point. Any of us that live there know that the seepage water thing goes from radical high to radical low. And in that, what you have is a macro system of wildlife back there that you won't find anywhere close to Baton Rouge. And to think of all the roads going to and from this bridge and the impact it's going to have on Plaquemine Point will no longer be the same thing. And it's hard to believe that there's not a better spot on the Mississippi River that has less impact on wildlife, on residences, on long-term populations there as Plaquemine Point. And I would surely hope to, I saw a number that as a taxpayer, we have paid $300 million for studies of where this bridge goes. It boggles my mind on how you can spend $300 million on a study and then end up at Plaquemine Point. It just doesn't seem to, and I just ask that all the non-tangibles that go into making this decision be considered when making that final decision.
Just for the record, $300 million has not been spent. We don't have $300 million to spend, other than for a bridge. And that was dedicated by the administration through the legislature. What we were allocated for Phase 1 and Phase 2, which we're nearing the end of Phase 2, was $5 million.
Well, there is a difference there, isn't it?
Yeah. We
Well,
have
thank you,
not
man.
spent
Thank you for
$300 million
clearing that up.
studying anything, I can assure you.
So, well, thank you very much.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Next, Mr. Robert Causey. Okay, thank you. But you do oppose E11-4?
My name is Robert Causey, and I guess a resident of Plaquemine Point and also Iberville Parish. The crossing that they're talking about going across Plaquemine Point, which I'm sure has been brought up many times before, it's an area of big, large regrowth cypress trees that are going to pretty much be destroyed. And I know that there's mediation that goes through this and all that, but I don't see how you could replace 300-year-old cypress trees, that were there prior to the Louisiana Purchase. And this has all been documented and this kind of thing, and that's my primary gist of this is that, it's hard to see things like this just go away, just as, everybody else has said, that once it's gone and it won't be anymore. So that was.
Thank you. Mr. Cliff Como. You were with us in Plaquemine.
Yes, sir. I've been up since 4:30 this morning, because I went hunting on this very property that we're talking about, E11-4 crossing. I've been deer hunting there since the season opened. I'm a retired game warden. I was over half of the state when I retired in 2022. I'm well aware of species and diversity. We have identified 102 different animal species and over 100 plant species that are on some list or a watch list. In particular, there's a dozen that my former department has declared to be on the species of greatest concern on the list. It's documented on the Wildlife and Fisheries website. I intend to keep hunting there. I've been hunting there my whole life. I am in opposition of E11-4, just for the record. I heard a mention of maybe perhaps an elevated section over this. I don't think an elevated section over 300 feet or 600 feet of right-of-way would allow the lifestyle that many of us in this room have and have had for all of our life. So, want to stress it again, I'm against this particular option. There was some mention about stakeholder meetings, and I just have a question about that. I don't know who the appropriate person is. I know this is not a Q&A for y'all, but I don't think anyone behind me who owns property here was ever invited to a stakeholder meeting, so I didn't know what the definition of a stakeholder meeting is. And would a landowner be considered a stakeholder?
We held public meetings all over the parish areas on east and west sides, I want to say in 2022, if I recall. And it was in the spring. We were from February through maybe April of that time frame, if I recall. And so I remember going to one in Baton Rouge, but they were held in various parishes.
Sure. Oh, thanks. I understand what a public comment section or public hearing is, but I'm particularly speaking of a stakeholder. A stakeholder, in my mind, means someone who owns the property that will be affected, such as maybe Shintech or someone like that, or Georgia Gulf. Has any of the landowners, particularly on the East Bank, been part of a stakeholder meeting at this point?
So
Yes.
that's what I mentioned during the speech. I contacted Ms. Como last week about setting up meetings and site visits.
Okay, so stakeholder meeting for landowners is imminent.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Miss Laura Como.
Yes, I know her well. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Laura Como, and I've been a resident of Iberville Parish in Plaquemine Point for my whole life. I would like to talk about this is an article, it's by Jason Terrio, PhD. He wrote in January 2022. It's a digital documentary, but it's speaking about 150 years ago. Louisiana had the largest and oldest cypress forest in the country, in the Atchafalaya Basin. Within 50 years, from 1880 to 1930, this Atchafalaya was, nearly all the old-growth cypress in the basin had been destroyed. The nation's largest contiguous bottomland hardwood forest had been cut. That was 2,400,000 acres. And we're talking about 150 acres that would be impacted by E11-4 that comes through Plaquemine Point. So we're trying to save some old-growth forests that in the past 150 years, our state has not done so well to preserve and to conserve. Those lands were not reforested because it wasn't economical for the big timber. The companies sold off to Shell and various oil companies. So what the cutover swamp looked like at the end of the cypress timbering was unforestable. They were not able to replant. They just cleared it and went on. Then they had mop-up agencies who came in the 1940s and 50s to finish off all remaining old-growth forests and nearly all remaining old-growth forests in Louisiana. So to have this forest here in Plaquemine Point is really quite rare. It isn't virgin forest, it's old growth, so it's in the 200 to 300-year-old trees. So it's very precious, not only to us, but to our state. So I would encourage you to look at this digital documentary. It's cypress logging in Louisiana, and it shows the history. The next thing I would like to do is to read a letter that was written by the Wildlife and Fisheries Department to the DOTD. So from one state agency to the other. It was written to Mr. Lott at the DOTD. It's due to the significant ecological value, A.E. LeBlanc Natural Area was designated as an official natural area in 2022 by the state of Louisiana. This 60-acre property in Iberville Parish is owned and managed by the LeBlanc family and is located in Sunshine. The tract was recently identified as one of 3 locations for the proposed Mississippi River Bridge. Should this site be within or adjacent to the final footprint of this project, irreversible harm would be caused to the ecological integrity of this at-risk wetland, natural community, and the species that utilize it. The Natural Area Registry Program was created by the Louisiana Legislature with the specific intent of conserving properties like A.E. LeBlanc Natural Area. Areas that exemplify Louisiana, natural communities, and biodiversity. Enrollment in the Natural Area Registry recognizes and honors the significant contributions of Louisiana landowners and the role they play in protecting and preserving our natural heritage throughout their voluntary stewardship. In this case, A.E. LeBlanc Natural Area was enrolled in the Natural Area Registry due to the presence of old-growth bottomland hardwood forests, which serve as vital habitat to more than 12 species of greatest conservation need, documented from the site. This property is also registered with the Old Growth Forest Network and the Louisiana Purchase Cypress Legacy Organization due to the presence of 220 to 360-year-old cypress trees, which were alive at the time of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Valuable ecosystem services are provided by A.E. LeBlanc Natural Area, including but not limited to floodwater storage, water filtration, storm protection, and carbon sequestration. Removal or impairment of those services would likely facilitate colonization of invasive plants and animals, resulting in devastating impacts to surrounding communities. Disturbances to hydrology, soil, or vegetation, as well as an increase in anthropogenic activity, human activity, on or near the property will degrade the area. When forests like this are cut for development, it can take hundreds of years for them to regrow to previous conditions, and in many cases, these forests never fully recover the carbon storage and biodiversity they once had. The Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries Louisiana Natural Area Program respectfully requests the utilization of alternative project options to avoid impacts to A.E. LeBlanc Natural Area. Should you have any additional questions on the registry program, contact Chris Doffett at Wildlife and Fisheries. And this is respectfully Nicole Lawrence, the biologist program manager. So I also wanted to give you a copy of these letters. I have several copies. I'll hand that to you.
Sure.
And the last thing I'd like to say is that Plaquemine Point is a historical neighborhood, 275 years old. We were founded in 1767, and the Plaquemine Point, the entire point, has been listed as a landslide heritage landscape on the TCLF. It's the Cultural Landscape Foundation. You can look it up on the internet, TCLF. And our entire Plaquemine Point has been declared a natural landscape for the historical value of the Acadian settlement there. And it's considered landslide because it's meant to bring awareness to like a very special landscape. And they have us as one of their like featured articles on that website. And I'll pass these letters.
Thank you, Ms. Como.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Dickerson, Travis Dickerson? Okay, thank you. Ms. Dorgant? But you are opposed to Route E11-4? Yes. Okay, yes, ma'am. Estelle Hill?
I oppose E11-4, but I choose not to participate.
Okay. Gene Mills.
Gene Mills, resident of Sunshine, Louisiana. I've been there for 25 years. It's good to see my good friends and to meet you again. I appreciate the work you've put into this exercise. Excuse me. And I know it's not an easy one to get the public, the municipalities, the funding, and everything involved to line up and for them to smile on you. But I'm here to oppose your route, not just E11, but any route that goes through Plaquemine Point. Obviously, I'm personally impacted as a property owner. I think our lifestyle and the heritage that was spoken of earlier is one that's to be considered. I can't help but believe that the equation that we set in choosing how to relieve, I believe, Dr. Calavoda, you said 25% of the Mississippi River traffic from what we call the new bridge. I'll call it something else because we remember when it wasn't there. The new bridge's traffic to the plants may have been the necessary next best question to the one that was asked before it. How do you create a northern and southern loop? We obviously have a headache with the traffic that's there, but I believe that the site that has been chosen impacts incredibly too much. I'm not an environmentalist, but I am a steward of the land, and I believe that land is rich with history. I believe it's I've seen from some of the historians who have recorded that the Acadians who came down from Nova Scotia, the first place they landed was right there in Sunshine. I believe there was a fort that was established on Manchac right there where it meets the river for both the French and the Spanish. And I think your bridge in that route interrupts and touches a point that not only has historical significance, it's got millennial significance that we should consider, especially when we have raw agricultural land just downriver, not too far from where this location is. I think when you stir up a general population with no promise that you got funding for the bridge or where it's going to land or the freeways that it's going to require on both the other side of the river, Highway 1, and this side of the river, Highway 30, is incredibly optimistic, to put it in a favorable sense. And I don't know where we are on the funding with the bridge. I think this is still speculative. Am I correct, Mr. Chair?
Well, you would be correct that it's not fully funded.
It's not even partially funded. It's not even maybe funded. It's an idea right now.
No, it does have quite a bit of funding. It
Could-
has a dedicated $300 million and part of the vehicle sales tax.
And what is the estimated cost of that bridge? Between
bridge-
3 and 5 billion?
The bridge and the connectors is roughly $3 billion.
The connectors being the off-ramp and the on-ramp, or the freeway that's got to supply them?
No, it is the connection from the west, Highway 1, to the connection on the east of Highway 30.
So the improvements to both of those are going to be accomplished in that $3 billion figure?
Improvements, they are connectors to them.
I believe
They're
that
not-
requires a freeway, a 4-lane and a 65 mile an hour, or something similar to what we have in the I-49 annex.
It will be highway grade, yes, but it would not be interstate grade, if I'm correct on that. Huh?
Yeah, I also believe that's optimistic. I've been told by some city councilmen or those who serve on the parish council that this will never happen in our lifetime. I'm okay with that outcome. You know, the paper reported this morning, and the news did too, that Sunshine, Louisiana, amongst small cities in America, is the number 2 most generous small city in America right now. And I believe that testifies to the cordial nature of everybody here. I can tell you they're not very cordial nor empathetic toward this idea, though. So I respectfully say thank you for your hard work. I'm hopeful that we find a better route and a better alternative, and that we solve the equation that we need to solve, but not by doing so by jeopardizing something of such rich historical and environmental impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do not have any further cards from anybody that wants to speak, so is there anyone else that has the desire to speak in the public comment section? If not, does anybody have any other new business before us?
Mr. Campbell talked about how me and Fred and Hank and all of us have been here for years and help. But let me tell you, I hope the governor is wise enough to continue to keep Mr. Campbell as chairman. He's been very professional in his task, great leadership, and I didn't know Mr. Campbell when I first was elected to this seat. I've served on several other loop committees and probably half a dozen of those over the years. But when Mr. Campbell was declared our chairman, he actually called me up to wanted to come meet with me at my office. And so he came and, I just didn't know what we were, just, hey, you can be on the committee, everything's fine. He actually gave me an interview, like, where I went to school, where I live, he really got to know, and and I think he did that to everybody. But he's very thorough, and it's going to be hard to find somebody to do the job that you do here. It's just outstanding and very professional, and your leadership is just unmatched anywhere that I've seen in the department.
You're very kind.
And Fred, and Dr. Calavota, and Hank, I don't know you very well, but I'm going to miss all of you guys, too. It's been a great deal.
We'll just be sitting over there.
Yeah. We can boo, and we can bring in some popcorn, maybe.
Well, thank you. Thank you, President Berthelot. This has been a interesting ride to get to where we are today. We're within sight of getting the final approval of a final site, and I think that's kind of exciting. When we started Phase 1, it was literally 4 years ago, and we're in the last roughly 6 to 8 months, I guess, of Phase 2, and we'll not only know a Phase 1, rather a final site of the 3, but then we can really start the plans on for the bridge, finalizing the financing, et cetera, because it's grossly needed in our area. I would bring something to your attention that you might not be aware of. The Wilkinson Bridge that we all know and love as the new bridge, which is, I was never called young when I was, around in my mid to late 50s, but that bridge is getting close to 60 years old. And usually bridges, when they get 70, are rehabbed. So there's a pretty tight window if that bridge has to be rehabbed, because the Sunshine Bridge has been rehabbed. The Huey P. and North Baton Rouge, north of East Baton Rouge and West Baton Rouge has been rehabbed before. So if they had to shut that bridge down for rehab, which means shutting lanes down to do decking and all of that, and there's not another bridge as an alternative, I cannot imagine what life would be around in the parishes that are affected by this. I think it would be very, very difficult. So it is vitally important that an alternative bridge be developed and placed somewhere in this region to take the pressure off, because that rehab work, whether we like it or not, will probably be happening in the next 10 to 12 years, if I were betting. Dr. Calavota may probably know better than I about the timing of that, but it's a critical component issue of this whole thing.
I don't want to comment necessarily on the rehab of the existing bridge, but we do have a part of the I-10 improvements, which are underway right now in Baton Rouge, but the later phases of that really require us to work on the approaches to that bridge, and we're not going to be able to work on the approaches to that bridge if we don't have an alternate bridge. So it's important that we proceed forward with a south bridge and get that in place, and then we can work on the approaches. But no infrastructure lasts forever. Eventually, it has to requires major maintenance, if not full reconstruction. And we're going to have to do that to the I-10 bridge sooner or later. So Mr. Campbell is absolutely correct in what he says. And I just want to point out, Mr. Mills, you're aware there's 3 alternatives, right? Only one of them goes through Plaquemines Point. Are you opposed to all 3 or just that one?
I think further south is less controversial.
Yes, okay. Well, there's 3 options there, just to remind everyone of that. So, and they're fairly different, all 3 of them. Anyway, okay.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we will stand adjourned, and I wish to all a very holy, blessed, and Merry Christmas and a happy and joyful New Year and a happy Hanukkah. So enjoy the holidays. Be safe.